Trying to see if I've got a video of me playing with it.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
Good day, you beautiful people. My name is Bizzle. This is TeaN'BizzKits, and this week's episode is a very special one. Why is that? Well, probably around 35 episodes worth of effort, many hours in the garage, 2 previous rolling roads which haven't gone to plan, but we are here. Judgment Day. Has all that effort been worth it? Is my car going to survive the rolling road? Is my car going to make the kind of power that I want it to make? So the first thing you need to do is show me some gratitude. Hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 500 subs, if not a few more. So please subscribe, like, share, tell everyone you know about it, because we are going places, I promise you that. And then grab a tea and a biscuit and enjoy this week's episode of TeaN'BizzKits. So it's an early start for us. It's actually still dark when we get up and leave. 2-hour journey north up to Northampton Motorsport. It goes without saying that we take a moment to admire the cars around. This particular area is always full of caterhams of all different shapes and sizes, old and new. So I do take a moment to have a quick poke around, see how caterham guys do it. Trying to unload my car is a bit faffy. I have to use axle stands to support the ramps. Starting the car runs ropey, getting the car off, but you know, this is what we're here for. It's going to be lots of nail biting stress today. See if I can balance the car on the rollers. Fail. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come. Strapping the car down, centralising it on the rollers, getting the fan in place. All these things need to be done before we can shut the doors and start the rolling road.
So what have we been doing apart from working too many hours at night? We've deleted the common rail across the top here, so now we've got some vac form takeoff. We've got aftermarket ECUs, which are Evo 525cc ECUs, MRP fuel rail, a adjustable fuel pressure regulator, new earthing strap for the battery, and then at the front, down here, I put some cowling on in a previous episode, so hopefully going to get a bit more cold air through the intercooler because the intake air temps were quite high. So hopefully that's just going to drop some of the intake temps. Which is going to be more power again. So we have pulled out the stops to get this car ready and up here on time to meet its maker. We get some downtime now as other people take over, plug in sensors in and all these various dials to make sure that it's going to be operating as it should on the rolling road. It's like it's in intensive care. We've got nice cars in the garage out the back. Ford GT, this nice old Ford. Very good. Sitting next to a Series 2, not so old, but also a classic Ford, looking very smart. But there's all sorts of stuff in this garage. Lots of Mark 1 Golfs, there's Capris, as you can see, MX-5s, Volvos, and Elise. But this RS2000 is particularly nice, very clean with its bubble arches. What's this I spy here? A really nice classic Porsche, twin turbo no less. Unusual look. You always hear about air cooled.
Genuine, legit air cooled.
I'd rather be safe. Focused on the truth. I can't wait.
So for the uninitiated off you, I'm going to roll through the basics of a rolling road. This is certainly how it's done here at Northampton Motorsport after being here a few times. So obviously you have a set of rollers in the floor. This particular bay can either do rear wheel drive cars when the car's sat there, front wheel drive cars when it's sat back there. They don't have any facility for 4-wheel drive cars here that I can see anyway. And then they have to rig a number of things up to the car to basically be able to understand what's happening. So that you don't just plug into an Omex ECU. They're going to take a knock sensor, which screws into the side of the block. They're going to take their own lambda sensor. So they're going to put that into your exhaust manifold. And then as this is a turbo or boosted engine, they also have a map line as well. So just having a quick look at the engine, you can see here, this is the tee off for the map, which is just running off over there to this Superflow, I think. Then you've got the knock sensor. Okay, so this is the knock. This will be the lambda, which is on the exhaust side. And then obviously Troy has his laptop, which will be plugged into the Omex. And then I think this here is just a quick remapping system. What I've seen in the past is Troy looks at the PC, but really he types all his gubbins into this interface here. And then there's some controls for the fan and various other bits and bobs as well. So that's kind of how a rolling road works. They will turn the fans on, it's noisy, it's hot, there's some screens so you can see kind of what's going out with the power reading, and then you basically just bite your nails and just hope that things don't go wrong. That's a rolling road. Okay, I'm just going to cut that there because what's going to happen next in the video, the next chapter, is going to go into a bit of a technical deep dive about the rolling road. How does it work? How does it slow down the engine speed of the car? But also the accuracy of it. What are the limitations of it? So if you're interested in that, obviously carry on watching because it is fascinating stuff. But just in case the technical stuff isn't really your game, then just use the navigation bar below just to go through to the next chapter where we crack on with my rolling road and see what happens next.
Could you explain how the drums work on a rolling road?
Okay, so in between the two rollers is a retarder, which is an eddy current retarder. It's very similar to what you might find on some large buses and trucks or fire engines and stuff like that. I don't know whether they use them in this country, but certainly in Europe and America they use them. So it uses electromagnetic force to apply braking force to the rollers. It's quite powerful. You can hear it buzzing. If I put some load on the retarder now, I don't know whether it will pick it up. It's a brake, and it actually looks like a very large disc brake. Two large disc brakes in between a bunch of coils. Nothing actually touches. It does generate a lot of heat. For example, currently it's at 44 degrees. Now, after we've mapped a car for 4 or 5 hours, especially if it's a high power car where you're spending a lot of time with the retarder at quite a high level of load, that will go up to 120 degrees, even though nothing's actually physically touching each other. It's pretty powerful. The rollers are rated at 1200 horsepower. We've never actually had anything that powerful on here, but we have had just short of 900 horsepower. And also they're rated to 220 miles an hour, and we do quite regularly run cars to close to 200, and we run cars for JLR Classic, the XJ220s, and we do actually run them to 220 mile an hour on here. And it's relatively undramatic, to be fair. The worst thing is if the tyres or the drivetrain on the car is not well balanced, then you tend to feel it. But if everything is balanced, tyres are in good order, it's actually very smooth, even at high speed. So for a power run, with something like this car, we're only using a very small amount of retarder load. The roll set is quite heavy. So some dynos are low inertia, which means that the advantage is you can stop them really, really quickly. But they don't simulate overrun, as in, when you're driving on the road, they don't simulate gear shifts very well. Whereas because this is a high inertia roll set, we can do, overrun, decel, throttle blipping, paddle shift setup. We can do all of that on here because it's very, very similar to the way the car would behave in the real world. The downside is if something goes wrong at 200 miles an hour, even if you apply full retarder load, you're not going to stop the retarders instantly. So the worst case scenario for us in here, it's not an engine failure, it's actually something on the drivetrain. So let's say a prop shaft lets go. As quickly as I can react and hit the emergency stop button, that's going to be flailing around under the car for probably 5 to 10 seconds, which is not pleasant. Fortunately, that happens very infrequently, and in 20 years, I think we've had a couple of clutches disintegrate, and I've had a prop shaft fail on the dynos. So it's very infrequent. So yes, going back to that, for a power run, you might add a small amount of retarder load or none at all and just let the car accelerate the weight of the rollers. There's a load cell in there which looks at the amount of load being placed on in reaction to the engines developing its torque and spinning the rollers. and obviously the software knows the RPM of the rollers and the engine, and it can calculate power and torque from that. When you're mapping, you can use the dyno in steady state mode. So we'll say if I want to map 4,000 revs and that happens to be, I don't know, 50 miles an hour in the gear that I'm in, I can just set 50 miles an hour, drive up to 50 miles an hour. The dyno will stop the rollers accelerating at that point. And as I apply more load to the engine and generate more torque, the dyno system will increase the load on the brake to stop the engine accelerating. So you can go literally to full throttle and all the way pretty much back off again, and the dyno will maintain the RPM. What it can't do is drive the engine. So if you get to the point where the throttle is sufficiently shut that the engine is not making any torque, it will start to decelerate. So you can't motor it in reverse, but it's very rare you even need to do that.
So the electromagnets are fluctuating their current to apply a braking force.
Yeah.
Are they also what's picking up the back end of that, like as you're letting off?
You'll see on a power run when I back off, this will go into a negative figure. So all rolling roads are actually measuring power at the wheels, at the contact patch. Or a hub dyno is measuring power at the hub spindles. Most people, they always talk about flywheel horsepower. Manufacturers talk about flywheel horsepower. More in Europe and definitely in America, they talk about wheel horsepower, much, much more than they do about flywheel power. The problem with that for me is that if we run this car if we were able to get enough grip in first gear to run it absolutely flat out, do a power run, if we ran in first, second, third, fourth and fifth, in every gear you will get a different wheel power figure because the gearbox is a torque multiplier. So a lot of dyno systems don't do any kind of coast down run. They just apply a percentage back to the wheel power figure to give you a flywheel power figure. But that's fundamentally flawed, because if you run in third gear one day and then you run in fifth gear the next day, but you apply the same percentage, you're going to get a different wheel power, flywheel power figure. The way this dyno works, and in fact our old dyno works, is you do a coast down run, which measures the amount of losses, what it's absorbing when the gearbox is in neutral or if you've got your foot on the clutch. That curve, it's not exactly exponential, but it looks exponential. So it increases with road speed because most of the losses are actually in the tyre. So if you drive flat out in a straight line on the road, say 110 miles an hour for 5 minutes, you don't go around any corners, you don't touch the brakes or anything, your tyres will be hot because the energy is going through the tyre, and that equals usage of power. You know, you can't create, you can just change it from one state to another. So the heat and the noise is all power being absorbed. So again, going back to the Jaguars, when we run them to 220 mile an hour, their losses at that speed will be 70 to 80 horsepower. Now that's not all through the transmission, most of it is through the tyre. So it's important to have a way of measuring that, and the coast down loss does that. So we measured power at the wheels, we've already got our coast down figure, you add one back to the other, you've got then a corrected flywheel horsepower figure. It's corrected for temperature, pressure.
So is it deriving the figures from the amount of resistance it takes to stop the drum?
Yeah.
Right.
So if you've got a car with very high horsepower, transmission losses, the rollers will slow down a lot faster. This is all tested at the factory. In fact, there's a calibration sheet in there which measures the amount of horsepower required to spin the rollers to a certain speed. So that's all embedded in the software. They measure, windage and parasitic losses. That's all factored into the software at a far higher level than I could possibly ever wish to understand. Everyone will tell you their dyno is the most accurate. We calibrate it. We run quite a lot of standard OEM cars on here. And apart from a few, they are actually generally very close to the book power figures that the manufacturers quote. We do run a lot of cars that have had their engines on an engine dyno, and then the engine goes in the car, comes here for final calibration, and providing it's, there are a few that are probably higher or lower, but most of the reputable people that we work with will get a very, very similar calculated flywheel power figure that they see on their engine dynos.
So back onto my car now. So I'm just taking a moment to explain to Troy all the things that have changed since my last visit with him. So they are things like the modifications to the throttle body, but also new injectors, and they have particular settings and attributes which need to be typed in to the Omex ECU. I also have a new fuel pressure regulator, so we need to set up the fuel pressure as well.
Okay, so it's idling reasonably well, around lambda 1,000 RPM. We may as well just get everything warmed up and see if we can get some sensible power runs out of it. As I've said before, if we're going to encounter problems, we may as well find out at the beginning of a mapping session than we do at the end. If it's not a fresh engine, doesn't require running in, or we're not, or for any other reason we're not in a position to run the engine, we warm it up, make sure everything's ready to go, and then we'll do the full throttle stuff first, and then work backwards. And there are a bunch of other settings that are like injector scaling, for example, that is determined by the peak fuel demand of the engine. So we need to find that out first
Before you can work back
before
down
we
to
can
it.
kind of work backwards. So so we'll do that and see where we get to.
So, ear defenders on, and now the noisy stuff starts and the nail biting begins. Now, you never really quite know what's going on with the rolling road. We don't know what Troy's thinking at times. He just kind of does what he's doing and does what he's best at, and that's just checking the car and then doing power runs when he's right. So sometimes it sits there for ages at the same RPM. Sometimes he does partial runs. We don't know. You just have to sit there, nail biting and thinking that nothing's going to go wrong. What we're ultimately hoping to do here is hit more than 250 brake. 250, 260, 270 was where we were before. So if we see less than that, we know we're in trouble. And I don't really want to be in trouble. I need a smooth run, without the engine stopping, without him taking them ear defenders off. All the time that's happening, we know that he's progressing and doing something. It's when the engine stops. It's when the ear defenders come off. It's when Troy gives us that look.
We'll make sure we haven't got a pipe off somewhere. Because all of a sudden it's idling fast again and wasn't making the boost I thought it was going to make. Quite a lot lower. I wasn't entirely sure. It didn't start to wheel spin towards the top, but something felt a little odd in the transmission. I mean, to be fair, it is actually making very similar levels of boost. It's slightly lower down as the revs climb, but not by a massive amount.
1.4 or 1.5 before.
Yeah, the peak it's similar, 1.5.
Okay, that's good.
Well, that's what it meant last time. Today's the red line, so we're a little bit below right at the top, but actually it's making more boost there. Why is it making less power? Unless it is wheel spinning, but it didn't feel, other than that weird bit at the top. But what bothered me more was then the next run, it made, I think, even less.
And again, the boost is
Boost is about the same, yeah.
Lambda's similar as well.
Well, it's not on the max miles out, but I mean, it's, you know, when you're doing this, I mean, okay, there it's 0.75 lambda. That is too rich, but it's not like 25 horsepower different too rich, if you see what I mean. Nothing's changed on the transmission, has it?
No.
The car that was in here yesterday didn't drop any fluids or anything, so I don't think there's anything on the rollers. Sometimes a little bit of brake cleaner on the rollers, just and the tyres, just cleans everything up, so they're all nice and squeaky clean. Obviously it's relatively low geared. I'm running in fifth and it's doing 125 miles an hour at the limiter.
Yeah.
But it's more mid-range, it's a bit disappointing. Then my let's do a full throttle run plan and work backwards might not be where we need to be, I don't know. Did we have a problem with this before?
Yeah.
Was it the solenoid?
Yeah. Well, it'd be worthwhile pulsing it, obviously, to start off with and see.
Let me just check that the ECU is actually, we're actually getting a power down there. Switching. Possibly activate it while it's just idling with a bit of luck. Okay.
It's a good start, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds clicky.
It sounds clicky, doesn't it?
Sit rep. We was meant to be doing power runs and then working our way backwards. It's not gone to plan. We're 50 horsepower down on what we were before. Don't seem to have any air leaks. Fueling seems okay. We don't know why. VVT might be not working, and that's why the mid-range is really bad, but it doesn't excuse losing 50 horsepower at the top. We're looking at this for now, seeing if that's the issue. And then on to the next problem, probably. So we're having issues at the moment, potentially with the VVT. This is the solenoid and the plug here. And what this does is when you fire the solenoid, which will be in the mid-range of the rev range, it opens up an oil gallery, which changes the cam intake, just rotates the cam wheel slightly and changes the timing for the intake. We don't think this is working properly, so we're just going to check it. Boo.
There's something clicking. Right, if you want to come around this side, I'll hold it at like 4K.
Yep. So an important job for Bizzle here. What I need to do is power probe the solenoid, and we should hear a difference in engine tone and an increase in power. Let's hope that when the moment comes, I don't drop the wire. Ah.
I think it's working again now. So the problem with that is, of course, if it's intermittent,
Yeah.
you know, the ECU unfortunately doesn't know that that's not working.
Yeah.
So we're not quite where we were before. We were a lot closer. You know, we could spend all day mapping it, and then the first time you go out on track, it feels flat and crap.
Yeah.
It could be that VVT solenoid.
The very first time we did it, it was stuck and we managed to free it up. That
Yeah.
time we just tested it and it worked.
Yeah.
So that would suggest to me that the plug is funny. That looked like special gubbins, not your average 12-volt light bulb.
No, it's not a light bulb. It's called a Noid light. They're used for testing ECU outputs.
Yeah.
But
I could use a multimeter, right? Because it's only just outputting a certain voltage.
you could do, yeah.
So I can check that wiring. But let's be honest, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's up to plug and solenoid. I'm probing that with 12 volts. Again, I've got a power probe.
Yeah. I don't know why that's sort of kicked it into life, but it has.
So in terms of mapping it, I mean, for me, obviously, I want to get it mapped.
Yeah.
In terms of testing on track day and stuff like that, I can check that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So if it's okay, we'll just keep an eye, make sure that it's working when it's working, and just try and get the car safe to run.
Yeah, okay.
So with that problem overcome and the engine now running better, just taking a quick moment to check some other things as well, including the throttle linkage, making sure we can hit 100% throttle when we need to. We also then need to top it up with fuel, and then it's go time.
Seems almost a message coming from space. It's almost a message.
All personnel stand ready.
It's almost a message.
All personnel stand ready.
So this makes very, very little vacuum at idle, and it makes, obviously, low load, and it makes no boost at low load. So the resolution in the map is crap. The way you can get around that is you can use something called pressure compensation. So basically you use the throttle position as your primary load, and then you have a compensation based on boost. But the way to do that properly is to map the engine completely normally aspirated and then put the boost pipes back on. But I think we're going to have to do it, because no matter what I do with the resolution in the manifold pressure map, I just get to a point where I'm in between two sites. There's a big gap in the load sites, and one site is mapped nicely, and then I go to full throttle. I don't get to the next site, so the ECU doesn't apply any more fuel, and it runs horribly lean. Yeah. So I was hoping to not have to do that, because to do it properly, it takes so much time. But we're going to have to do it, because this is rubbish.
Are you going to be able to do it today?
Yeah.
So take off the boost, this here, yeah?
Off the back of the charger. Take it off there if you want. I'll try and get that done quickly.
If you've got to do what you've got to do.
Yeah, I get this with like bike engine turbo cars, for example, because the turbo is designed to work at 10,000 revs, and they make no boost whatsoever low down. So you just can't map them as using manifold pressure as a primary load, because you've got no resolution in the map.
If it's another 2 hours, I'll take that over Wayne, there's something fundamentally wrong.
There's a screwdriver on the bench there. Yeah. This is boost pipe off. I'll swap the settings. It's not a problem, but I think it might be a bit of a clue why we're not making power. So, with the charger disconnected and just running it, I mean, I'm in first gear at probably 40% throttle, and the engine doesn't really want to rev out to the rev limiter, which it should do, no problem whatsoever. So I wonder whether the plenum is the problem. This is probably less of an issue when it's boosted.
Yeah.
Because the air's been forced in.
Yeah, of course.
But of course, when it's running like this, effectively, normally aspirated, it's got to suck the air in. And the edge of the plenum, if you look at where are there any air horns inside there? No.
But they are tapered in.
Yeah. When you say they're tapered
radius, so this is a thick old 8mm plate.
Yeah, and that's radius.
And it's radius.
Yeah. But the top edge of the plate, so about where your level with where your bung is on this end here, look.
Yep.
Yeah, that's about the middle of the throttle bodies. Yeah. And it's literally about that far away.
And that makes a big difference. I'll take that on board. I think the pipes are a little bit small and stuff as well. What do you want to do? Stop for lunch?
I'll carry on. If you guys want to have a break, I'll just carry on. I'll try and get it done. I mean, hopefully not too much longer now before we put the boost pipes back on. So in theory, if this is mapped correctly, normally aspirated, then that should be quite quick to add the bit of fuel in under boost and hopefully get some decent numbers. The ignition map does still remain manifold pressure based. So you can see here that because the engine isn't running, it's sitting at basically atmospheric pressure. So this is all still based on boost pressure. So yeah.
Happier? Good.
Yep. So
300.
yeah.
I saw 300. That's definitely more than 260 and 220. And...
I saw actually a bit over that, but I took some ignition out because
yeah, I think 307 was also one of the ones.
I think it was a little bit borderline. That was the one with a bit too much ignition at the top. Well, I say a bit too much.
So where are we now? At the red one?
The red one, which is
okay.
Yeah. I mean, we could probably massage a bit back in, but that is going to feel properly quick.
I would much rather it was safe.
Yeah.
Because it is all track use as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
and although it will take some time to acclimatise, I will spend a lot of time up there.
Happy with that.
This is far less of a dip as well.
No, I don't know why. Maybe that wasn't all ignition, because it was making more boost there. So obviously we need to. That belt is hanging on for grim death there.
Is it?
I mean, it's right on the edge. It might be there was a bit of slippage on the belt there on that run as well, because that belt is definitely trying to walk itself off the charger.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But
But I mean, that's something you can sort out.
yeah, and if it grips a little bit more, we're not going to cause any trouble.
I don't believe so, no. I mean, obviously that was making a lot more boost there. And when I say I thought I could just hear maybe the beginnings of a bit of detonation, so I took ignition out. So even if you get the boost back up to that, it'll still be running less ignition. So I think it'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's right at the last, unless you're, I don't know, what's probably got, what circuit's got one of the longest straights, Silverstone or Snetterton, unless you were flat out in fifth gear at 7.5, right up there, pinned.
Well, so what I would normally do, to be honest, is I would see where kind of peak power is coming in,
Yeah.
and torque is, which is kind of here.
No, that's boost.
Oh,
mate.
sorry, where have we got torque on?
Yeah, so torque is quite a bit higher. Typical supercharger, you see the torque climbs with the boost, so it's not like a normally aspirated car where you might have, peak power at say 7 and peak torque at 6 or 5.8 or something like that. The two climb together. So
looking at this, I might not rev it much past 7.2, and then it's only if I'm at the end of the straight or to save a gear change.
Yeah.
Then I'll rev out to 6. So rev limiter is what, 7?
Just short of 7.8.
7.8.
So I mean, you've got to bear in mind, like here at 4.4, you've got 170 foot-pounds of torque. That's like 420 arcade from territory at peak torque at 6,000 revs, and you're at 4, so it'll still feel rapid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to be faster than anything else I've driven.
So that's much better than I genuinely did not expect to get to that.
So what was the breakthrough then?
A bit of timing, bit of fueling. The timing alignment was slightly out, so I've corrected that.
Spark plug gap's okay?
Yeah, well, I looked at that, and of course, I think when we first had that issue, the very first visit with that heavy misfire, and we closed the plug gaps down then, and I think you subsequently put the new plugs in at the same gap.
Yep.
So no, I think they were okay. Yeah, just a combination of things.
And you're
really,
happy with them leads now? You think they're a
They
little bit
are.
dodgy?
Yeah,
but
no,
they
I think
seem-
they're okay. I think they're okay, to be fair.
Right, so there's no niggling kind of funny misfires, anything that you're worried about.
No.
It's really just belt slip, supercharger orientation could be better.
Yes. Yeah, there's something definitely not quite right there, because the bracket that holds the charger looks square to the engine, but the charger doesn't look square to the bracket, and I can't see how that can be.
No.
But obviously I saw the belt had moved, I walked it back on, so it was in line. As soon as I started the engine up, it just walked straight to the front of the charger pulley again. So
I mean, I've had that off, and I think before the first visit, or between the first and the second visit, that's off, been refurbed, and everything else. So, I mean, I've had that off and on, and I'm pretty confident it wasn't like that.
No.
It didn't jump on the previous one. So,
So that obviously, I'm surprised the belt has stayed on, given the angle that it's at. I mean, normally once you get a bit of misalignment at high revs, it just ping the belt straight off. But it has stayed on, and up to now there wasn't any evidence of belt slip. But I think on those last couple of runs there might have been a little bit going on.
so the belt's probably starting to wear now as well. So it's only a matter of time before it does probably
Because
jump off.
running over the grooves, it won't do any favours.
Yeah, the teeth are probably worn. Yeah. Oh well. Happy days.
You know, I've driven a couple of 300 horsepower cars like this on track, and they're not, you know, they're rapid,
Yeah, good.
properly rapid.
I'll look forward to this.
Maybe a bit track day. Let me know when that is, and make sure the phone's turned off.
I cannot get across how happy I am with that figure. All of this effort, all of them hours, everything, you know, it's been a long slog. But the car survived. And not only did it survive, but it made over 300 horsepower. But it made over 300 horsepower. And that's massive for me for two reasons. One, because I knew that these cars with this kind of power, they do make that kind of horsepower. And so I knew that I wanted to get up to that figure. And two, for me, 300 horsepower is like approaching 500 brake per tonne. So that's the kind of figure that I wanted to be driving my next car at, because it's going to test me as a driver. I've driven some fast cars, but this is going to be pretty difficult for me to really quickly acclimatise to. It's going to be pasty on track, so I cannot wait to drive this. And so if you're still watching, I've got some exclusive news, because a lot of people chip off, they don't watch the end. I've already booked a track day. Of course I have. 24th of January at Snetterton. So if you're around, come say hi. If not, you know what's coming up in the next episode. 24th of January, Snetterton, track day, happy times. Hopefully it goes all right. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. We will see. But for now, remember to subscribe. It really means a lot to me. And my name's been Bizzle. This has been TeaN'BizzKits, and I'll see you again soon.
Any final comments, Troy?
Thank God that's over.